Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday from my Sydney studio, my Sydney office. Hope you guys are doing well today. It is Thursday, the 6th of March. It has been a pretty strange old week, to say the least. It has been, it continues on, doesn't it? One of the things I have come to realize, especially in this 2025 that we find ourselves in, is that no 2 days are the same. I can't be sure what's going to happen from one day to the next. As organized as I like to be, there has definitely been, it's been an unusual start to the year. But you know what? Another thing that I've learned, and this is my long-term journey, is that you have to be prepared for the unpredictable, correct? And good morning to Sharon. Good morning, my darling. Be prepared for the unpredictable because, we think we've got it all sorted. We think we are, going along at a pretty nice pace. And within a very short amount of time, it can all get a little bit thrown in the air. So good morning, everybody. Good morning to Ruth joining us on YouTube. Good morning also to Robin joining us as well, I believe, from New Zealand. So good morning, everyone. Really cool topic that we're going to play around with today. But before I get into it, I just want to send all of our love and absolute best wishes to our Queensland, Northern New South Wales family and friends who are pretty much in the eye of the storm, quite literally. Well, not yet. I know that the Cyclone Alfred hasn't landed on land, hasn't made land yet, but its impact is already being felt right throughout the southern part of Queensland, the northern part of New South Wales. It is a massive system, and just keeping an eye on it for all of us, just to make sure that you guys are well. I've had to cancel a few bits and pieces on our end. I mean, our impact is obviously completely minimal because we are we're down towards the southern part of New South Wales. So we're in quite a minimal impact zone, but it is just some things we're having to move around, some product that we may not get hold of because we just don't know how the storm's going to impact transportation and all sorts of stuff. So to all our family and friends in Queensland, please be as safe as you can be over the next few days as the storm moves across our country. So sending you all our love from Sydney. So also good morning to Christine, who's joining us from New Zealand. I can see Francesca as well joining us from Western Australia. And also to Adele. Good morning to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen joining me live. It's going to be a really interesting little topic that we're going to be diving into this morning. And that is the top 5 science-backed body fat melting strategies. Because, fat and the reduction of fat on our body, it's quite a complex system that goes into actually the reduction of body fat. But I've got some pretty cool things that I can share with you guys this morning that are science-backed, because you know me, I like a bit of science-backed strategies that you can do and you can incorporate so that you can be, on the deficit side of fat rather than the additional side of fat, because we don't want to be adding more fat to our body. I mean, some people do need it, don't get me wrong. But for the majority of us, we would actually like to be at the right weight, containing the right amount of body fat for our body. Fat is good, but too much fat, as we know, can also be quite harmful and quite dangerous to our bodies. So that is going to be our conversation for this morning, which is going to be things that you can implement now, things that you can start doing today that is really going to help when it comes to that really big equation, which was how do we melt body fat? So before we get into it, just saying a quick good morning to Robin as well and to Nova. So what is the processes that happen in your body when it comes to losing you don't lose it, you get rid of it, right? You burn it or you melt it, as another term that people like to use. But literally, you're burning this excessive, parts of the body where we are storing excessive amounts of fat. So fat is, when we store it around our body in certain places, some fat is necessary. Like, for example, there's different types of fat. There's white fat that we store in our adipose tissue, and that's kind of like the jiggly stuff, right? That's the stuff that doesn't look too great when it's jiggling around. It's kind of loose. It's almost like spongy like. So that's that white fat. Then there's also a fat known as blonde fat. So fat actually goes through a stage process, and it's named these things because it's actually literally the color of fat. So blonde fat is not that sort of jiggly stuff. It sits in other parts of the body, and it's not quite as inflammatory as white fat, but it's stuff that we kind of want to keep an eye on as well. And then there's a third type of fat known as your brown fat. And brown fat is full of energy. And brown fat is the good fat we want, because brown fat is really high in energy, or mitochondria, which is what gives it that brown color. And it helps to keep us warm. It helps to keep our metabolism high because it's full of energy. So it helps to burn the white jiggly fat that we don't like. And actually having brown fat on your body is really, really important. And we tend to have very small amounts of brown fat, unfortunately, but not all fat is bad, is what I'm trying to point out here. The type of fat that I'm talking about today is primarily the jiggly stuff. It is the stuff that lives in our adipose tissues. It's the stuff that makes our body size increase, right? Because even though that white jiggly stuff doesn't weigh very much, it doesn't weigh as much as muscle, I should say, it actually it takes up a lot of space. So the ideal scenario is that we are burning or melting the jiggly stuff, getting rid of it. That means our body size is going to go down significantly. You see yourself going for, when I started this journey, I was like a dress size 20 to 22, depending on what part of my body I was putting clothes on to. And I've gone down to a 8 to 10. So yes, that's a big shrinkage of body. But if I actually look over at the overall fat loss, it's not that great. When you think I've literally more than halved my body size, gone down in body shape by half, but I didn't lose, over half. I didn't lose over 50 kilos, which would have been about half my body weight at the time. So body fat makes us look bulky, yet it weighs less than muscle, but it's the stuff that is dangerous because, when we're carrying that excessive jiggly fat that lives in those adipose tissues, that fat tends to be quite inflammatory. So it contains a lot of inflammatory markers, and it's those inflammatory markers that we see. Remember, because where inflammation lives, so does disease and illness. So we know that when we're carrying excessive body fat in the form of the jiggly stuff, good way to describe it, right, is that we're also at higher risk of disease and illness. So it's dangerous fat that I'm talking about today. So when we're storing that stuff on our body in different parts, and we store it everywhere, right? We store it on our face, we see it in our face, we see it in our neck area, around our shoulders, and our back, on our arms. We can store that fat anywhere. For females, we do tend to store quite a significant amount of it in our midsection, right? And in that area there. Men as well, they tend to store quite a significant amount of it around their midsection as well. But in general, we can store fat pretty much anywhere, right? If we've got excessive food coming into our body, or energy, remember food equals energy, and we're not using up that energy in our day-to-day, lifestyle, moving around, and we keep on putting more and more energy in, that energy has to be stored somewhere. And we store it in our fat cells, and that creates that adipose tissue. So in order to get rid of that fat, we've got to look at the energy side of the equation. So one of the fastest ways, and this is number one on the list, one of the fastest and most efficient ways to burn or melt fat is to understand the importance that energy plays in your body. So if everything that we eat gets converted into energy, aka glucose, it then makes sense that we are monitoring the amount of energy that we're putting into our body. In other words, we're focusing on a nutritionally dense whole foods approach. If you're someone who's wanting to melt fat and you're living in the supermarket, as in you're buying everything in boxes and jars and pre-processed, and you're living in the drive-through, and you're relying on other people like restaurants, cafes, takeaways to do the cooking for you, you're not living a whole foods diet. In fact, you're doing the opposite. You're living a processed foods approach. And that is not going to work when it comes to fat melting strategies, because a lot of the foods that we are purchasing that are processed, that are you find in the supermarket aisles, that you find in the takeaways and the bakeries and the fast food joints and the drive-throughs and restaurants and cafes, a lot of that food has a lot of energy. And so you're putting a lot of energy into your body. That energy is then getting converted into glucose. So you've got all this glucose now floating around in your body. If you're not using all that energy, and most people cannot use all that energy, especially if you are living in the supermarket aisles and the drive-through, you can't use all that energy in one day. So your body needs to do something for it. It doesn't just magically disappear. Your body needs to move it around. It needs to do something with it. And what your body will do is it will store it, because it doesn't want it float, doesn't want all that glucose floating around in your blood. So it will store it in your fat cells. Now, if that glucose is stored there long enough, in other words, you don't use it, it gets converted into fat. It goes from glucose to fat metabolism. And that's how you grow fat cells in places around your body. So it makes sense that in order to reduce the amount of fat on our body, melt the fat, burn the fat, use up the fat, is we've got to be really understanding on what sort of energy we're putting into our body, how we can monitor that energy that's coming in and not have too much going in. And this is one of the reasons you'll always hear me say we need to avoid the blood glucose spiking foods, because it's just too much energy coming in. We can't use it up. We then store it, and that becomes fat. And as we know, too much fat storage around our body is highly dangerous and highly problematic. So the number one thing you can do is to consume a whole foods diet approach. Now, I had this conversation even yesterday with someone who did a lot of the cooking in their house. But what they had been doing is they were buying processed foods, like they were eating a lot of pasta. They were eating a lot of things made from white flour. They were making it themselves, but they were eating, and so they couldn't quite work out how they had put on such excessive amounts of fat, because they're like, but I do all the cooking at home. But even the foods that they were cooking from were not whole food. So, for example, pasta is not a whole food because it's been processed from white flour into different, shapes and lengths for you then to make into pasta. So white flour, for example, is not a whole food. That is a highly refined carbohydrate. So when I talk about whole foods, I'm talking about nutrient-dense foods. I'm talking about foods that are high in fiber. I'm talking about foods that are naturally satisfying. And these are the things that are going to help to keep the energy intake low, so you're not flooding your body full of glucose. Of course, I'm talking about whole vegetables, right? So taking a cauliflower into your kitchen, right? Not cauliflower chips, which, by the way, are in the health food aisle, which are not healthy. Let me tell you that. Cauliflower chip, not so much. I'm talking about things like broccoli, zucchinis and mushrooms, whole mushrooms, right? Not mushroom cup of soup. That's a processed food. But if you took the whole mushrooms into your kitchen, completely different story. I'm also talking about like whole styles of lean protein, like beef, like even beef mince. Yes, it's been minimally processed, but it's still a protein. I'm talking about pieces of salmon and not, salmon flavored things. I'm talking about nuts and seeds coming into your house as opposed to things that have been processed from nuts and seeds. And of course, I'm talking about healthy fats. So I'm talking about avocados. I'm talking about olive oil. Yes, olive oil has been processed, but it's minimally processed. We look at these as being whole foods. we need to avoid the ultra processed foods, because those tend to be, and literally everything in your drive-through window. If you're spending more time in the drive-through than you are in your kitchen, or if you're spending more time on your phone delivery apps than you are in your kitchen, then you're eating an ultra processed diet, which is the opposite of fat melting. You're eating a diet that's high in added sugars. You're eating a diet that's high in refined carbohydrates. You're eating a diet that has lots of unhealthy fats. So please be aware that the number one way that you can melt body fat is to eat a whole foods diet, a whole foods approach, because this is going to avoid the blood glucose spikes. That's number one. Number two, I'm just having a look at my comments here. We've got any comments now. I'm saying hello to Karen from Whangarei. Good morning also to Sharon from WA, and to Sally and to Tony as well, who's joining us from Brisbane. Stay safe, Tony. Brisbane, as we know, and Tony, our dear friend Tony here, is right in the firing line when it comes to that weather system moving across. So we're sending you all our love, Tony, and staying safe and staying dry and looking after everyone, including you and the family, and of course friends and neighbors as well. So that was number one. So number two, strategy. So if you're wondering what is a whole foods approach, pretty much what we do on Boost Camp, by the way. Yeah, that's pretty much what we do. What's what we do on Boost Camp, honestly. There's a reason why the Boost Camp meal plan is written the way it's written, is because I am actively looking to melt the fat on people's bodies, because the majority of people come to Boost Camp for fat reduction. There's other reasons, don't get me wrong. Like for some people, it's about pain reduction or medication reduction. For other people, it's about gut health. It's about improving their overall health. But often when we look at that overall health system in the body, one of the key drivers of ill health is excessive body fat, where we run the risk of having all these illnesses and diseases caused by excessive body fat. So Boost Camp is literally a whole foods approach. We take minimally processed foods, mainly whole, into our kitchen, and then we process them, i.e., in other words, we cook them, we peel them, we chop them, processing, we cook them, processing, and then we eat them. And it may sound like a really simple way to break it down, but literally that's what we do, and that's why people on Boost Camp have such incredible results. You can now join Boost Camp at any time, by the way. Boost Camp is now what we call a 365-day approach. So you can join Boost Camp now. You don't have to wait for the next Boost Camp to start, because literally the day after this current Boost Camp ends, I'm sending out the next Boost Camp meal plan. And it's going to be like that from now on. There's no waiting. So if you wanted to join Boost Camp today, you can join Boost Camp today. And if you wanted to do the next Boost Camp after that, as soon as you've finished the current Boost Camp you're on, you've done the 28 days, we give you access to the next Boost Camp meal plan and recipes straight away. You then get time to prep, you get time to shop, you get time to start when you want, and you start when you want. And then when you finish that 28-day Boost Camp, the very next day, you get access to the next Boost Camp meal plan. And that's how it's going to be. So you can join Boost Camp at any time. You don't have to wait. There is no waiting now. You can join Boost Camp anytime you want, and you can start anytime you want. And you can go anytime you want. And you can have a pause anytime you want. So we've just implemented that now. That strategy is brand new. We implemented it on this current new Boost Camp because we want to make 2025 as awesome as possible, as fat burning, fat melting as possible for so many people. So that's Boost Camp. Excited by the changes. I'm actually working on the next meal plan now, so that our current Boost Campers, they will get access to the next Boost Camp meal plan the day after their Boost Camp ends. They can open up the meal plan, look at the recipes, create a shopping list, have a few days off. I have a bit of a break in between Boost Camps, obviously, and then start whenever they want. I mean, it's exciting, but that's where we are with Boost Camps. So number one strategy, whole foods approach. So incredibly important, because that means we're going to be managing our energy intake, right? And in order to burn excessive fat stored in our bodies, we've got to be managing our energy intake. We've got to be eating more whole foods and less processed foods, less highly refined carbohydrates and more of the good things. In other words, we've got to be in charge of our kitchen. Okay, number 2, we need to really consider meal timing. So when we eat, we need to optimize our meal timing and also our meal frequency. Because for so many years, we have been told that in order to burn fat, you've got to eat lots and lots and lots of little small meals all the time. Like, this strategy was super popular for the last 20 years, at least, maybe even longer. It's been super popular. And the whole kind of science, pretty poor science behind it. Well, science wasn't saying this, but this is what the industry was saying. You've got to eat lots of, basically you've got to snack lots. Don't have big meals, just have lots and lots of small meals, because it'll keep your metabolism fire burning. Load of garbage. It's probably one of the most dangerous industry-backed responses to long-term weight loss that has come out since we were told to count calories. Like, quite frankly, it is one of the worst strategies out there, because every time you eat, you convert that food into energy. And if you're eating lots and lots of times, but they're just small meals, it doesn't matter. It's not the amount of food you're eating, people. It's the frequency of what you're eating and what the food is that you're eating. Because I can put a plate of food in front of you that's full of all the good things. It's full of fiber, it's full of protein, and it's got healthy fats. And I could put a big meal in front of you, and you could eat that big meal, and guess what? You're still going to burn or melt body fat, use it up as energy, heal your gut, get all your nutritional needs. You're going to be great. But if I stuck a packet of chips in front of you, right? And think about a packet of chips. I'm talking about potato crisps. Packet of chips, right? Once you open the bag, it's all air anyway. So the actual crisps inside of it might only weigh like, I don't know, 35, 40 grams, something like that, right? Big packet, lots of air, small little amount of chips. And you eat that packet of chips, oh, it's just a little packet of chips, I'll be fine. The energy you have just consumed, plus the unhealthy fats, is off the Richter scale. So you have taken my big, healthy, full of fiber, protein, healthy fats, you've taken that big meal, right? And you've eaten it, and you've got nutrition, and you've got fat burning potential, and you feel satiated and satisfied, and your blood glucose has remained stable, you haven't spiked it, and you've eaten this big plate. Or you've eaten that little handful of chips. You're going to get more of a glucose spike from that little handful of chips. You're going to get zero nutrition. In fact, you've just put a whole lot of inflammation into your body, and you're like, oh, but I've only had a small amount of chips. So why aren't I losing weight? You're not losing weight because you've just eaten a whole lot of really bad energy. You've spiked your blood glucose. You've got a lot of starch in there. You've got all those unhealthy fats, probably a whole load of extra sodium, because chips are salty, that you don't need as well. But you've had this tiny little packet of chips compared with my big, huge plate of good food. So it's not the quantity of food that you're eating. It is what you're eating and how frequently you're eating it. So here's where the rubber hits the road when it comes to number 2, and optimizing what time you eat and the frequency is you need to eat less often. But that meal needs to be that big, delicious, healthy plate that I'm talking about, full of protein and full of fiber and full of healthy fats. Not this little tiny packet of highly refined, highly processed, high in sodium, high in unhealthy fats, toxic fats, starch, sugar, all the things. You go, but there's no sugar in potato chips. So the other word for glucose, remember, everything you eat gets converted into glucose. The other word for glucose is sugar. The other word for glucose is sugar. So when you're eating foods that are high in starch, which is basically potatoes, almost pure starch, potato chips, you're converting that starch instantaneously into sugar. So it is a high sugar, highly refined, high starch product that you're eating. So we need to eat less often. Ideally, you're eating 2 to 3 times a day. Ideally, you're eating that big, beautiful meal, healthy fats, healthy protein and fiber and vegetables and all that. That's your meal, right? And you're eating 2 to 3 times a day. I say 2 to 3 because some people will have one really big meal, which is almost like breakfast and lunch together, and then they'll have a dinner. So they're still having kind of 3 meals, but rather than eating 3 times a day, they've reduced it down to 2. But every time they eat, it's a whole foods diet, right? So you're eating less often, not more often, because you don't want your glucose to be up and down, up and down, up and down all day. You want to keep it stable, so you eat less often. If you need to snack, you add the snack onto your meal. Like for me, for example, if I want to have a treat, one of the ones from my pink book, one of the ones from my new blue book. Yes, I've got treats in my blue book too, my brand new blue book, is I will have that treat with my meal, with my breakfast, with my lunch, with my dinner at the same time. So I'm not having snacks in between. So eat less often. If you want a treat, add it to your meal. And the ideal timing for eating, the ideal timing is to eat, like to avoid eating first thing in the morning. Avoid eating first thing in the morning. You want to give your body time to like drink some water, maybe have a nice black coffee or tea or something like that, right? So don't eat first thing in the morning. Just delay your breakfast or your first meal by a couple of hours. Ideally 2 to 3 hours in the morning, you don't eat. And always, always avoid eating too late at night. So you also want to avoid on the other end, you want to allow at least 3 hours from your dinner before you hop into bed and go to sleep. So that 3-hour window on either side, in the morning and in the evening, does not mean you're a faster, but you're actually eating in a more structured, optimized time, right? And you're eating less often. So that's number 2. We really want to optimize our meal timings. And it's just by delaying your first meal and making sure your last meal is not too close to dinner time. So optimize your meal timings and also optimize how often you eat. Less is more. Snacking should be avoided for fat burning and fat melting. All right, number 3. I talk about this all the time. We're going to talk about it today as well because it's part of the science-backed principles when it comes to fat melting. Number 3 is you need to prioritize your protein intake. I've said this probably every day this week, and there's a reason why I'm saying it. Because of the importance when it comes to health, when it comes to fat burning or fat melting, when it comes to muscle mass protection. Because the reason why protein works when it comes to fat melting is because protein increases those feelings of satisfaction. When we're eating protein, we feel more satisfied, right? So in other words, we feel less hungry. That little packet of chips, I can probably, take my hat off and put onto the fact that if you were to eat that packet of chips, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour later, you're hungry again. Now, if you sat down to that wonderful whole foods meal of protein that you've cooked, lean protein that you've cooked, fiber that you've also processed and cooked yourself as well, and a bit of healthy fats, in half an hour, you ain't going to be hungry. Probably not even in an hour or 2 or 3 or 4. In fact, you're going to go that length of time before your next meal is due without needing to snack because you're satisfied, and protein is a part of that satisfaction equation. So protein is incredibly satisfying. Protein will also preserve or protect your muscles from breaking down naturally. And protein also has what they call a high thermic effect, which means when you eat protein, your body needs to use up more energy to digest it. So you're more energy efficient when your body is breaking down protein. What am I talking about when it comes to protein? I'm talking about ideally animal protein, because animal protein is just a better source of protein for our human bodies. We can break it down better. We can use it better. Our bodies like it better as a source of protein. There are, of course, some plant-based proteins. They're not quite as efficient a source of protein for our bodies. So if you are someone who is leading a plant-based or primarily vegetarian lifestyle, you just have to be more aware about getting your protein intake to a level that you're protecting your muscle mass during aging, and that you're also getting that satisfaction, and you're making sure to stay strong, because that's what protein is, right? Protein keeps our muscles strong. So when I'm talking about protein, I'm talking about all of the red meats. So I'm talking about beef, and I'm talking about all the game meats as well. So beef and lamb and pork, which are the common ones. I'm talking about things like elk, which is really popular in other countries. I'm talking about all the game meats, so whether it be venison. I'm also talking about offal. Offal is a really good source of protein. So livers and kidneys, hearts if you're that way inclined, brains if you're that way inclined. If you're going, ew, I get it. I actually happen to love all of those things. I'm not too, I've got to actually clarify. I'm not too big of a fan of kidneys. Something about kidneys. Maybe we've had bad experience. I will eat them like in a steak and kidney type casserole that would go into a mashed top pie. I would eat that, yeah. But I don't know if I'd sit down to a plate of kidneys. Like, prove me wrong. Tell me how awesome they are in the chat, please. Let me know. Is it just me, or is anyone else going, "Ow, kidneys"? I'm like, does anyone know I've got a really good kidney recipe? Because I'm always up to try stuff. And I guess, I've seen a lot of kidneys for sale on their own in my butchers, my local butchers. Maybe we need to ask for them. I'm sure they've got them, right? Because all the animals they're bringing in whole have them. I do eat a lot of livers. In fact, I will be having liver and onion gravy as part of my breakfast this morning. I made it last night, and I'm looking forward to it. You're probably going, oh, and I'm like, yes, I love it. So please, in the chat, if anyone's got Christine's going, no, okay, is anyone going to be good? Has anyone got a good kidney recipe? Yeah, but I do like a little bit of offal. It's good protein. It is good protein. So we've got all those types of protein. We've got obviously our poultry as well. So our chicken, our turkey, duck. As long as it's more of the breast meat, because duck is quite a fatty meat. But in saying that, duck in moderation is absolutely fine, and I do really, really like duck. If you're having any type of game birds, fine as well, especially if they're wild, even better. We're also talking about seafood, which is a great source of protein. So all of our oily fish, our fatty fish, whitefish, etc., etc., etc. And we're talking about those plant-based proteins. So chia seeds is a pretty good source of protein. Not as good as animal, but here we go. I'm going to say it. Chia seeds, quinoa is another good source of protein as well. And my personal favorite at the moment, which is lupin beans or lupin flour. So my offal this morning, my liver breakfast. Can't wait, starving. My liver and onion breakfast. I'm actually going to be. I've got some roasted vegetables that I roasted off the night before. That's going to be on the side. I've got some kimchi. I've got some pickled zucchini and a few different pickles that are going on it. But I'm also going to be making just a little quick lupin waffle bread. So one of my lupin bread roll recipes or bread recipes, it's a quick one that I'm going to be making in my waffle iron. So I'm going to have my waffle. So yeah, I've got my protein as well in the form of my lupin. So there are definitely, some good plant-based proteins out there. But just remember that we have to prioritize our proteins. We absolutely do. Because the long-term benefits of looking after your protein must be in our thinking, in our long-term strategy of how you don't just want to burn fat today and then tomorrow you put it back on, right? No, this is a long-term strategy I'm talking about here. And that protein prioritization is really going to help the long-term maintaining of muscle mass and strength. So when you've got muscle, you've got a higher metabolism. More muscle means higher metabolism. So again, we're reducing the risk of weight or fat regain, right? So that's number 3. Number 4, we have to incorporate movement. This kind of goes into that protein conversation as well, right? Because when we are sedentary, we're not using up energy from food. And if we put too much energy in, that energy will then get stored as fat. Because if you don't use it, your body needs to store it. You don't pee it out. You don't pee out excessive energy. You don't poo out excessive energy. If you're putting the energy in, i.e. highly processed foods all the time, lots of small little meals, all the stuff we've talked about, that energy, your body has to do something with it. It doesn't just sit there and then you poop it out. If you don't use the energy from the food that you're eating, your body will store it as fat, right? It'll store it as fat. So if you've got more of that fat sitting around and less of that muscle sitting around because you're sedentary, you're just not using up the energy, and at the same time you're really lowering your body's metabolism as well through that sedentary lifestyle. So incorporating movement is important. What does that movement look like? Well, that movement could be whatever. It could be however. It can be wherever, right? There isn't like you must go and get a personal trainer, you must go to the gym, you must do strength training, you must. Look, it's movement for anyone, anyhow, anywhere, right? It's about movement like modes as opposed to you must do this type of movement. Because often if we have been leading a sedentary life, whether it be because we're just too busy or we've aged and we've started to really slow down, any movement's going to be better than no movement. Look, if we really want to break it down, strength training, so resistance training, so lifting weights, doing these types of movements that actually make the strengthen the muscle, they're all going to be amazing when it comes to fat melting. But really, to be completely frank with you guys, any movement is better than no movement. And it needs to be intentional. Please don't think you're like, oh, but I get up and I walk around the house. That's not intentional movement. That's because you've got to go to the fridge. That's because you've got to go to the couch. That's because you've got to go to the bed, got to go to the toilet. That's not intentional. That's the stuff that you've got to do anyway. I'm talking about you having a plan to move. What that movement looks like, you decide based on your current existing strength status. It will always get better the more consistently you do it. And if you can move into these resistant type exercises like lifting weights, right? Or even doing body weight exercises, so using your body weight as the counterbalance, you're going to start to improve the fat melting potential. How often do you need to do it? So when it comes to this resistance exercises, at least 2 times a week, ideally 4, right? 2 times a week, ideally 4. But there's other types of movement. So when it comes to things like more of your cardio style movement, so looking to again use fat as energy, burn the excess of glucose floating around in your blood by moving. Like I said, walking, cycling, swimming intentionally, not just walking to the fridge, intentional movement. You're looking at around about 150 minutes a week. So if you're doing 30 minutes worth of walking a day, you're doing that 5 days a week. And then you're adding on 2 to 4 times a week some type of strength training. Of course, you move up to that. I don't mean you go out there and you do that now, but you move up to it, especially if you have been leading quite a sedentary lifestyle for some time. We've got to get you strong in steps. But number 4 is we need to incorporate some type of movement. Anywhere, anyhow, right? Any type. We've got to incorporate movement. So that's number 4. And number 5, and this is really important, just checking the chat to see if anyone's talking about kidneys. Okay. Oh, Francesca. There we go. Love kidneys. Lamb kidneys are the best. All right. I'm waiting for, okay, Francesca, thank you for your follow-up chat. Oh, Ruth is saying, this is from Ruth before I get into it. Come on, Ruth. You're not a fan, Ruth. But this is from Francesca. Love kidneys. Here's her follow-up chat. Are you ready? Sliced and pan fry in garlic, Dijon mustard, which of course is the sugar-free mustard, and white wine. I think that's supposed to be, is that white wine, Francesca? Turns it creamy. Could be white something else. So quick. My butcher sells them. Let us know where your butcher is, just in case somewhere is around you where you are, Francesca, what suburb or what sort of town you're in. Slice, and so you slice the kidneys. Okay. Good to know. No, I'm serious. Good to know. You pan fry them in garlic. Yes, I'm there for that. Add onions. Is onions a thing? Because I always do livers with onions and garlic and usually fresh thyme or rosemary, some type of spice, and then coconut cream. Milk. Sorry, I don't even use it. It looks creamy because it's a really good brand of coconut. That's what I use. Just wondering if that's it as well. Turns it creamy so quick. And Christine, I know what Christine's saying. So this is from Christine. I feel so seen right now. And that is in direct reference to Ruth's "I think all awful is awful" comment. So yeah, we've got two sides of the aisle going on here. We've got the fors and the against. And look, I am for everything. I need to practice more. I need to follow Francesca's lead here and go see my butcher. Ooh, watch the space, everybody. Watch the space. Right, our final number 5 when it comes to science-backed strategies for fat burning and fat melting is we need to focus on. Here we go, and this is for long-term strategy, right? Long-term. We need to focus on lifestyle changes, not short-term fixes. Because if we're just focusing on, I need to lose weight to go to this wedding in a month's time. I need to lose weight for my birthday in 6 weeks' time. I need to lose 10 kilos so I can fit into that dress or those pants or whatever it is. If we're focusing on these short-term solutions or short-term fixes, the opportunity for you to yo-yo diet and put all the weight back on plus more massively increases, especially if you're not doing the other things on my list, which is prioritizing protein to protect your muscles from breaking down as you're losing fat. If you're not doing some type of intentional movement as well, if you're calorie counting instead of looking at a whole foods nutritional approach, if you're not doing those things and you're relying on just the short term, or look at me, I've lost weight on the scales, but actually chances are you've also lost muscle mass. And then you go back to what you were doing before you started your new nutritional approach, the weight will 100% come back. 100%. Except now that you've also lost muscle mass at the same time, not just fat, but muscle mass at the same time, is you're going to put on even more weight than you lost because you've lost muscle. And remember, muscle keeps your metabolism fire burning. Muscle is very anti-inflammatory as well. It's pro-movement. It's pro-strength. So when you are losing fat and or losing weight on the scales without actually seeing the bigger picture, you run the risk, if it's a short-term fix, of not run the risk, you will yo-yo diet. You will. You can't go back to what you were doing and expect the weight to stay off and expect the fat to stay off and the muscle to be strong. This needs to be a lifestyle change. This needs to be you learning what you need to do to make those lifestyle changes permanent, right? Make the lifestyle changes so different that 85 to 90% of the time, this is the lifestyle you lead, so you can have the 10% of the party. You can go out and do the things, right? And eat the silly foods and that aren't really foods, they're food-like substances, because 85 to 90% of the time, you've made these permanent lifestyle changes, which means you're protecting your body from putting on excessive fat, and you're protecting your muscles, and you're protecting your heart, and your brain, and your gut, and your energy, and your immune system, and your chances of, or your increased risk of disease and illness, right? You're protecting yourself against those things. And we do that by making this a lifestyle change. And of course, how do you make this a lifestyle change? If you're wondering, for anyone who is wondering, this is from Francesca. By the way, it was white wine really quick on sourdough and parsley. Francesca, we don't eat sourdough, my darling. Nor do we cook with wine. But anyway, I'm going to have to find another way to get through that one. I love it, but I don't think I'll be doing that, my dear. I wish you'd come up with the BHK approved way. As a treat, that's the 10%, right? What Francesca has just called out as the 10%, it's not the everyday percent. We can potentially find a BHK approved workaround for that one. I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can. So thank you guys for joining me today. But of course, if you want to make these top 5 science-backed fat melting strategies stick long term, what do you need to do if you haven't already done it? That's right. Come and join me on the 28-day boost camp. This is what we teach. This is what we do. This is our lifestyle. This is our changes. This is our 85 to 90% so that we can have the kidneys with white wine and sourdough, right? We can have that, but not all the time, because we know the foods that we need to put into our bodies more often. The consistency is going to be the thing that melts the fat and keeps it off for good. So thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure. To our friends and family in Queensland and northern New South Wales, stay safe. We are absolutely keeping an eye on what's happening. You're in our thoughts, you're in our hearts. If you need any advice, please reach, like food advice, of course, please reach out. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you live tomorrow for, hopefully live, yes, tomorrow's Friday. I'll see as many of you as I can live tomorrow. So have a great day. Take care, be well, be safe, and we'll see you guys really soon. Bye-bye. Bye, guys.